Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this comforting expectation of precision. It's kind of like engineering.
Right, yeah. Like it's just mechanics.
Exactly. Like
Ah.
you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line across the bone, and the doctor just points and says, well, there it is. That's the problem.
It's binary. Broken or not broken. It's clean. And
Yeah.
because it's clean, it gives us a really clear path to fixing it. We are just deeply comforted by things that are visible.
Definitely. But then you step into the world of human relationships.
Oh, boy.
Right. You step into neurodevelopment and romantic attachment, and suddenly that beautiful, precise x-ray machine is just completely useless.
Totally useless.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is honestly incredibly murky. You have two people who seemingly love each other, but they are stuck in this cycle of toxic arguments, and there's no x-ray to show where the bone is broken.
Because we are dealing with invisible forces here. I mean, we're talking about subconscious biological drives that basically dictate some of the most important life-altering decisions we will ever make.
Yeah.
And yet, most of us have absolutely no idea they're operating in the background.
Which is exactly why we are here today. So, welcome to the Book Nook, everyone.
Welcome.
You, the listener, are officially part of our community, and we are just thrilled you're joining us as we explore the source material of a truly paradigm-shifting book today.
It really is.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into Attached, the new science of adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller.
It's honestly a foundational text in modern psychology.
Yeah.
If you have ever looked back at your romantic life and felt like it was just this series of baffling mysteries,
Oh, absolutely.
like why you stayed with someone who basically ignored you, or why you suddenly lost interest in someone who's perfectly nice.
The perfectly nice ones. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This material provides the Rosetta Stone to basically translate all that behavior.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is to decode those hidden relationship behaviors. We're going to dive into the sources Levine and Heller have gathered to prove that our success in love isn't just about magically finding the one.
Right, or just having like better communication skills.
Exactly. It is fundamentally about understanding our own hardwired biological needs. We're going to completely flip the script on what society tells us about love, dating, and independence.
Because we are essentially bathed in cultural messaging that fundamentally misunderstands human connection.
We really are.
From the time we are young, we're told that being fiercely, uncompromisingly independent is the ultimate goal of a mature adult.
Yeah, the message is basically you shouldn't need anyone. Your happiness has to come entirely from within.
Which is wild.
It is wild. And if you do need someone, you're labeled as weak or needy or codependent.
Right.
But the science, the raw evolutionary biology outlined in this book tells a completely different story. So let's start at the very beginning, down in the evolutionary roots of how human beings actually bond.
Let's do it.
We have to talk about the biology of love, which brings us to the pioneering work of John Bowlby.
Yeah, John Bowlby is widely considered the godfather of attachment theory. And his stroke of genius, back in the mid-20th century, was recognizing that human beings evolved to single out specific individuals in our environment and basically make them uniquely precious to us.
Wow.
Yeah, and this wasn't just some romantic, poetic phenomenon. It was a ruthless survival mechanism.
Right, because if you picture our ancestors in prehistoric times, the environment was incredibly hostile.
Very much so.
If you relied only on yourself, if you were like a true lone wolf out on the savannah, you were highly likely to end up as someone else's lunch.
Exactly. Genetic selection heavily favored people who became intensely attached to a significant other.
Makes sense.
Because that proximity provided a massive physical survival advantage.
If you have someone watching your back while you sleep, sharing resources, protecting you from predators, you actually live long enough to pass on your genes.
So we are the descendants of the people who clung to each other. We are. Our brains are essentially ancient hardware operating in a modern world. Evolution bred us to be dependent.
But somehow, as we moved into the modern era, dependency became this dirty word. I was reading through the historical context in the source material, and the authors trace this back to what they call the codependency myth.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
It really is, and honestly, a little horrifying how this evolved. It traces back to child-rearing advice from the 1920s and 40s. There was this prevailing psychological consensus back then that you absolutely should not coddle children.
It's so hard to imagine now, but the leading experts of the time, figures like John Watson, We're telling parents to basically treat infants like miniature rational adults.
Like little CEOs or something.
Exactly. Adults who need to be trained out of their emotions. They warn mothers that lavishing too much attention on a baby or picking them up every time they cried would spoil them.
Right, that it would create these needy, insecure, maladjusted adults.
The gold standard was the totally self-reliant child who just never cried unless they were physically injured.
I mean, they literally advised parents to only kiss their children on the forehead at night, shake their hands in the morning, and never hug them.
A handshake for a toddler. It sounds completely barbaric.
It really does. But what's wild is that this 1940s attitude toward children somehow mutated, and it became the dominant 21st century self-help advice for adult romantic relationships.
It's everywhere.
We are constantly told that we shouldn't rely on our partner for our inner peace, that if we need them too much, we have pathological boundary issues.
Yeah, the codependency movement is a perfect example of this. Originally, that framework was very helpfully designed for families dealing with severe substance abuse.
Right, situations where relying on an erratic, addicted person was actually destroying lives.
Yes, but pop psychology basically took that highly specific clinical framework and just applied it indiscriminately to all romantic relationships.
Which is so damaging.
It is. And applying it to healthy relationships actually goes directly against our fundamental biology.
I want to dig into that biological truth, actually, because the book highlights a study by Dr. James Cone that absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, the fMRI study.
Yes. So he took married women and put them into an fMRI scanner, which measures real-time brain activity, right? And he told them they were going to receive a mild electric shock on their ankle.
It's a brilliant experimental design, honestly. He was looking at how the brain's stress centers reacted based on one single variable.
Which was who was holding their hand.
Exactly. Who was holding the woman's hand while she waited for the shock? So when the women were in the scanner entirely alone, anticipating the pain, their hypothalamus, the region that regulates the body's stress response, just lit up dramatically.
Right, the brain was screaming, danger.
Danger. Then they had a completely anonymous stranger come in and hold the woman's hand.
And what happened?
The anxiety, according to the fMRI, was reduced slightly. You know, human touch helps a little.
That makes sense.
But the incredible part happened when their husband came in and held their hand. The stress response in the brain almost entirely vanished.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The women barely registered the threat of the shock.
It's just incredible to think about. The brain literally delegates its emotional regulation to the partner.
It really does.
And it's not just brain waves either. It's cardiovascular health, too.
Yeah.
The sources mention blood pressure studies showing that when you have a good, supportive marriage, physical contact with your partner literally lowers your blood pressure to healthier levels.
Right.
But if you are in a bad marriage, physical proximity actually raises your blood pressure.
Which tells us something really profound. Dependency is a biological fact. It is not a personal failing or a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
Once you attach to someone, you literally form a single physiological unit.
Yeah.
Your partner regulates your heart rate, your breathing, your hormones, all in real time. You are biologically programmed to depend on them for homeostasis.
And this brings us to what the researchers call the dependency paradox, which, sounds like a contradiction.
It does.
I mean, if we are completely reliant on our partners to regulate our nervous systems, shouldn't that make us clingy and unable to function alone?
It's highly counterintuitive, yeah. But the paradox is this. The more effectively dependent people are on one another, the more independent and daring they actually become in the outside world.
Wow.
To really grasp the mechanics of this, we have to look at another foundational piece of attachment research, which is Mary Ainsworth's strange situation test.
Right. Okay, so picture a laboratory room set up like a playroom, full of toys. A mother and her 1-year-old infant enter the room.
Right. And initially, the infant happily explores the room, plays with the toys, crawls around the perimeter. They're completely confident and autonomous.
Just doing their baby thing.
But then the researchers have the mother leave the room, and almost immediately the infant stops playing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they become frantic. They cry. They search wildly for the mother. The independent exploration completely stops.
The toys don't matter anymore at all.
Exactly. When the mother returns, she comforts the child. She holds them. And once the child's nervous system is regulated again, once they feel reassured and secure, they climb down from her lap and confidently resume playing with the toys on their own.
So the mother acts as a secure base.
Yes. The infant can only explore the unknown, potentially dangerous environment when they possess the absolute certainty that their secure base is present, vigilant, and available to them if something goes wrong.
And Brooke Feeney's research out of Carnegie Mellon proves that this exact same dynamic applies to fully grown adults.
It maps perfectly. Feeney's studies showed that when adults feel their romantic partner is a reliable, supportive, secure base, when they know they have that emotional safety net unconditionally, they are significantly more likely to confidently pursue their own independent goals.
That is so cool.
Yeah, they take more risks at work, they travel, they act autonomously.
You know, it's almost like an astronaut tethered to a spaceship.
I love that analogy.
Right, like if you're an astronaut floating out into the terrifying, vast unknown of deep space, you can only boldly execute your spacewalk, fix the satellite, and focus on your complex tasks if you have 100% confidence that your oxygen line, your physical tether to the ship, is completely secure.
Exactly.
If you look back and see that tether fraying, or, you think the ship might just fly away and leave you, you're not going to care about exploring space. You're going to panic, drop your tools, and cling to the hull of the ship for dear life.
The secure tether actually enables the independence. Without the tether, you just get paralysis and panic.
But wait, if these two things, biology and culture, are completely at odds, how do we reconcile this? Because if I go on social media right now, I'm going to see 100 posts telling me to be a lone wolf, to hustle alone, and to never let anyone see me sweat.
Oh, definitely. The algorithm loves that stuff.
It does. So how do we square this deep, undeniable biological truth with a culture that practically worships total, unyielding independence?
The reconciliation requires a massive perspective shift. You have to recognize that our culture is frequently dispensing advice that just fights human biology.
Yeah.
When you try to force yourself to be completely emotionally self-sufficient, you are fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming, which is just exhausting.
An unwinnable battle.
Truly.
Yeah.
The most successful, most resilient individuals aren't usually lone wolves. They are usually people who have found a secure partner to depend on. You accept the biology, you find the right tether, and then you use that stability as a launch pad to conquer the world.
So the practical application of this is that we need to understand exactly how our specific brains are programmed to attach to that tether.
Exactly.
And the book categorizes human relationship behaviors into distinct attachment styles. So let's start deciphering these styles.
Broadly speaking, there are three main styles: secure, anxious, and avoidant. Statistically, just over 50% of the population falls into this secure category. Around 20% are anxious, and about 25% are avoidant.
And there is a fourth, much smaller category too, right?
Yes. There is a rare fourth category called disorganized, sometimes referred to as fearful avoidant. It makes up about 3 to 5% of people.
Okay.
It's a very difficult style because it's a combination of both high anxiety and high avoidance. It often stems from childhood trauma, where the primary caregiver, the person the infant biologically must rely on for survival, was also a source of fear or abuse.
Wow. So the brain is essentially caught in a terrifying paradox. It's screaming, run to them for safety and run away from them to survive at the exact same time.
Precisely. It creates a freeze response. And in adulthood, it manifests as desperately wanting love, but being utterly terrified of it when it actually arrives.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It is.
Yeah.
But while this book touches on it, the primary focus is on the big three: secure, anxious, and avoidant, because they make up 95% of the dating pool.
What's amazing to me is that adult attachment was essentially proven by a quiz printed in a daily newspaper.
Ah, the famous love quiz.
Yes.
It was published in the Rocky Mountain News in the 1980s by researchers Cindy Hazan and Philip Shaver. They essentially took the infant attachment behaviors observed in Mary Ainsworth's lab and just translated them into adult relationship scenarios.
So simple.
Yeah, they just asked readers to check which descriptions fit them best.
And the results were a revelation. They perfectly mirrored the statistical breakdown of the infants. It proved that the exact same biological attachment system operating in a baby crying for its mother is operating in a 30-year-old agonizing over a text message from a date.
Exactly. The hardware doesn't change, just the context.
Right.
To help us map this out, the authors talk about two defining dimensions that determine your style, which are anxiety and avoidance.
Okay, so picture a graph with an X and Y axis.
Right. The anxiety dimension measures how preoccupied you are with the relationship and how deeply you fear rejection or abandonment. The avoidance dimension measures how comfortable you are with intimacy and emotional closeness.
So if you are low on anxiety and low on avoidance, you are secure. You enjoy intimacy, and you don't panic about being abandoned.
Correct.
If you are high on anxiety but low on avoidance, you are anxious. You crave deep intimacy, but you are terrified your partner will leave you.
Yes.
And if you are low on anxiety but high on avoidance, you are avoidant. You don't worry much about being dumped, but you feel suffocated when someone gets too emotionally close.
Spot on. And to help us spot these styles out in the real world, without having to hand a date a clinical questionnaire,
Which would probably ruin the date.
it definitely would. The authors lay out a framework they call the 5 golden rules.
So how do we actually apply this framework? What's the first thing we should be looking for?
The very first rule is simply, determine if they seek intimacy. Look at their actions, not just their words.
Words are cheap, right?
Exactly. Do they actually want to be close? Are they making concrete plans, trying to integrate you into their life, or are they always keeping a physical and emotional buffer?
Right. And the second piece of the puzzle is assessing their preoccupation and sensitivity to rejection. Are they constantly worried about where they stand? Do they need constant reassurance, or do they seem completely unbothered by distance?
Rule 3 is a crucial reminder for perspective, which is look for various signs, not just one symptom. I mean, we all have bad days.
Sure.
A secure person might be distant because they have the flu, not because they are avoidant. You were looking for a consistent pattern of behavior over time.
The fourth rule is my favorite because it's just so actionable. Assess their reaction to effective communication.
Yes, this is huge.
If you look at someone and state a need, clearly saying like, I feel disconnected when we don't talk for 3 days, I really need a quick check-in.
Yeah.
How do they react?
That is the ultimate litmus test. A secure person will lean in, validate your feelings, and try to compromise.
Right.
An avoidant person will likely mock you, call you needy, or pull further away. And an anxious person might over-apologize and panic. Their reaction to a clear boundary tells you everything.
And the fifth rule is all about the negative space. Listen and look for what they are not saying or doing.
Oh, yeah.
If someone has been dating you for a year and has never once mentioned introducing you to their family, or never uses the word we when talking about the future, their silence is just shouting their attachment style at you.
It really is. What's incredibly empowering here is how these 5 rules take the exhausting guesswork out of dating. You can stop asking the agonizing question, does this person like me?
And start asking what actually matters.
Exactly. You start asking a much more important question. Is this person actually capable of giving me the intimacy I biologically require?
It's like learning to read the code of the matrix in your relationships.
Yes, I love that.
Before, you just saw random fights, weird moods, confusing mixed signals. But once you apply these rules and see the attachment styles, you see the underlying code. The fight that made no sense yesterday suddenly makes perfect, predictable, logical sense today.
But, a common question rises here. Is it really that rigid? Are we putting every single complex, nuanced human being into 3 neat little boxes?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is it a fluid spectrum where we drift back and forth depending on our mood or, who we happen to be dating at the time?
Well, it is definitely a spectrum. That's why we use the 2-axis graph of high and low. People can be mildly anxious or extremely anxious. But long-term research shows that your primary style dictates a highly predictable, generalized pattern of thoughts and biological reactions in romantic situations.
So you kind of have a default.
Exactly. About 70 to 75% of people remain consistently in the same attachment category over their entire adult lives. You might shift slightly, depending on your partner, but your default biological wiring, your knee-jerk nervous system reaction to intimacy and threat, usually anchors heavily in one of those 3 categories.
So if the anxious person's alarm is incredibly sensitive, let's look at what happens when that alarm gets tripped. The book refers to the anxious style as living with a 6th sense for danger.
Yeah, for someone with an anxious attachment style, intimacy is deeply, profoundly desired. They have an immense capacity for love, warmth, and closeness.
That's the beautiful part.
It is. However, they are plagued by a hypervigilant attachment system. Their brain is constantly scanning their relationship environment for any microscopic sign of distance, rejection, or withdrawal.
And the science backs up this 6th sense. There is a brilliant study by Chris Fraley that proves anxious people literally see things that other people miss.
The Morph movie study.
Yes. He used what he called a morph movie technique. He took a computer-generated human face that started out looking deeply angry, and frame by frame, over many seconds, the face morphed into a completely neutral expression.
Right, and he asked participants to watch this morphing face and press a button to stop the movie. The exact millisecond they felt the anger had fully dissipated from the person's expression.
And what happened?
The results were startling. People with an anxious attachment style stopped the movie significantly earlier than secure or avoidant people. They were much, much faster at perceiving the offset of the emotion.
And they also did the reverse experiment, right? Morphing the face from neutral into anger.
Yes, and the anxious people detected the onset of anger frames earlier than anyone else. They have a highly attuned neurological radar for emotional shifts.
You could argue that's a superpower, honestly. If you think about our prehistoric ancestors, sensing a micro-expression of anger in the tribe leader meant you could apologize and make amends before being violently cast out of the group.
It is absolutely a survival superpower in the wild. But in a modern romantic relationship, it comes with a major caveat.
Yeah.
Because their attachment system is so highly sensitive, they tend to jump to conclusions based on these incredibly early, subtle cues. If their partner's tone of voice shifts slightly, the anxious person instantly assumes, they are mad at me, they are going to leave.
Oh.
And because they jump to conclusions on incomplete data, they frequently misinterpret the emotion entirely. The partner might just have a headache, but the anxious brain perceives an existential threat.
And it gets worse once the alarm is tripped. Brain imaging shows that when an anxious person's attachment system is triggered by a negative scenario, the regions of their brain associated with emotional regulation, specifically the orbitofrontal cortex, are under-recruited.
The orbitofrontal cortex essentially acts as the brakes on the brain's emotional gas pedal. When you get scared, your amygdala hits the gas.
Vroom.
Right. In a secure person, the orbitofrontal cortex kicks in a moment later, assesses the situation logically, and hits the brakes, calming the system down. But in an anxious person, when the attachment threat is perceived, those neural brakes physically struggle to engage.
So they just can't stop.
They literally cannot just turn off the panic once they get triggered.
Which perfectly explains the concept of the danger zone versus the comfort zone. If you are anxious and your partner is acting a little distant, you are instantly plunged into the danger zone. Your brain starts screaming that you're going to be abandoned and you can't logic your way out of it.
And this intense biological panic leads to what attachment theory calls protest behaviors. Think back to that infant in the strange situation test.
Right. The baby left alone.
When the mother leaves, the baby doesn't just sit there quietly. It protests, it cries, reaches out, throws a fit, does whatever it takes to reestablish contact and bring the secure base back.
Adults do the exact same thing, just in slightly more sophisticated and sometimes destructive ways.
They really do.
The examples of protest behaviors in the book are painfully relatable. It's calling your partner 6 times in a row when they don't text back, hoping the sheer volume of contact will force a response.
Yep.
Or it's the exact opposite withdrawing, giving them the silent treatment and waiting to see if they notice and come after you.
It can also look like manipulation. Picking a fight over something trivial just to force an emotional engagement, because even negative attention feels safer than distance.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Or purposely flirting with someone else to make your partner jealous, testing their commitment.
What's fascinating is that these protest behaviors in the digital age, obsessing over the lack of an exclamation point in a text message, or religiously checking someone's location on a tracking app, are the exact same evolutionary mechanism as a baby crying in the prehistoric wild.
Exactly the same.
Your brain legitimately believes that separation from your partner is a literal threat to your physical survival. You are acting out to force your partner to reassure you, to reestablish the tether.
But the tragedy of protest behavior is that it almost always backfires. Instead of drawing the partner closer, it often pushes them further away, especially if that partner happens to be avoidant.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
And this brings us to one of the most heartbreaking dynamics of attachment theory, the gravitational pull. Why on earth are anxious people who desperately want warmth and closeness so frequently and powerfully attracted to avoidant people who push them away?
It seems like the worst possible match, yet it happens constantly.
It's a tragic irony. When an anxious person dates an avoidant person, the avoidant partner inevitably sends mixed signals. One day they are incredibly affectionate and present. The next day they are aloof and distant.
The hot and cold routine.
Right. And this unpredictability constantly activates the anxious person's hypervigilant attachment system. The anxious person is thrown into the danger zone, filled with anxiety, obsession, and suspense.
Their alarm is blaring nonstop.
Exactly. Then, just as the anxious person is about to break, the avoidant partner throws them a crumb of affection. They send a sweet text or plan a nice date.
And boom.
The anxious person's alarm finally shuts off, and they experience a massive, overwhelming rush of biochemical relief and euphoria.
And this is where the wires get crossed. The anxious person begins to equate that emotional roller coaster, the terrifying, gut-wrenching lows of anxiety, followed by the dizzying highs of relief, with passionate love.
It's so sad.
They mistake an activated, panicked attachment system for butterflies and romance.
They literally become addicted to the drama.
Yeah.
A secure, calm relationship feels boring to them because it lacks that intense spike of adrenaline and dopamine.
Wow.
And unfortunately for the anxious person, the dating pool is mathematically stacked against them. The book calls this the law of large numbers.
The math on this is absolutely brutal. Break down why dating apps are basically a minefield for anxious attachers.
Think about the mechanics of the dating pool, right?
Right.
Secure people tend to get into relationships, figure out they work, and stay in them for a long time.
Because they're secure.
Because they're secure.
Yeah.
Therefore, they are rarely single and rarely in the active dating pool.
Yeah.
Avoidant people, however, end relationships much more frequently because they constantly feel suffocated by intimacy.
Right.
And because they suppress their emotions, they get over grind-ups very quickly. Consequently, they re-enter the dating pool almost immediately.
And to make matters worse, avoidant people rarely date other avoidant people.
Right, because if you have two people who both avoid intimacy, there is no emotional glue to keep them together. They just drift apart.
So they're looking for anxious people.
Exactly. So if you are an anxious person who just downloaded a dating app, a disproportionately massive percentage of the active users you are swiping on are avoidant people, actively looking for someone exactly like you to date, get close to, and then push away.
So, knowing all this, what are the dating strategies for someone with an anxious style? The authors offer some highly practical advice. First, you have to learn to identify the smoking guns of an avoidant person early on.
Yes.
You're looking for mixed messages, someone who values extreme independence over togetherness, or someone who mocks your emotional needs as needy. The rule is, the second you see a smoking gun, you have to walk away.
You cannot fix them.
You cannot fix them, and you cannot change their biology.
The book also recommends something called the abundance philosophy. Anxious people tend to attach very quickly. They might go on one good date and immediately stop talking to anyone else, completely obsessing over this one person's texts and actions.
Putting all their emotional eggs in one basket.
Exactly. The abundance philosophy dictates that you should actively date multiple people simultaneously in the early stages of getting to know them. It's not about being a player. It's a biological strategy to desensitize your hypervigilant attachment system.
That is so smart.
By talking to several people, your brain doesn't perceive the loss of one person as a lethal threat. It lowers the stakes.
It's like having a car alarm that is so incredibly sensitive that it goes off, blaring at 120 decibels just because a leaf blew past the window. The anxious attachment system is that car alarm.
Perfect analogy.
By dating multiple people, you are manually turning down the sensitivity dial on that alarm. You aren't curing your anxiety, but you are quieting it enough so you can actually sit in the driver's seat and objectively evaluate who is capable of meeting your needs.
But there is a massive hurdle here. Many anxious people will successfully use this strategy, go on a date with a wonderful, secure person. And because there is no anxiety, no drama, and no mixed signals,
Let me guess.
their attachment system remains perfectly calm.
And the anxious person misinterprets that calmness. They think, well, my heart isn't pounding. I'm not agonizing over their texts. So there must be no chemistry. There's no spark. And they friend zone the secure person.
Which is why the crucial work from an anxious person is learning to rewire their brain to understand that true love is actually supposed to feel calm, safe, and peaceful. A quiet nervous system is the goal, not a sign of failure.
So if the anxious person's alarm is hypersensitive, what happens when they encounter someone who seems to have disconnected their alarm entirely? How does the biology of the avoidance style work?
On the surface, people with an avoidant attachment style seem completely unbothered by relationship dynamics. But internally, they equate intimacy with a profound loss of independence.
They're scared of being trapped.
Exactly. They harbor a deep-seated, often subconscious belief that if they let someone get too close, they'll be trapped, controlled, and lose their autonomy. Therefore, they constantly utilize behaviors designed to minimize closeness and maintain emotional distance.
The book uses a powerful cultural example to illustrate the extreme end of this mindset. It's the lonesome traveler myth, specifically the story of Chris McCandless, made famous by the book and movie Into the Wild.
Chris McCandless is the ultimate tragic embodiment of avoidant ideology. He was a bright young man who abandoned his loving family, gave away all his life savings, and walked into the brutal Alaskan wilderness entirely alone.
Just totally isolated.
He genuinely believed that complete self-sufficiency and total isolation from human connection was the purest, most elevated form of existence and freedom.
But the profound tragedy is what he realized at the very end of his life. Starving to death in an abandoned bus, isolated from the world, he wrote a final realization in the margins of a book. Happiness only real when shared.
It is a devastating, visceral realization of the biological truth we discussed with John Bowlby. Even the most fiercely avoidant people, with the strongest ideological defenses against connection, cannot outrun their evolutionary programming. We fundamentally require connection to thrive.
But on a day-to-day basis, in modern relationships, avoidant people fight that underlying need for connection using an everyday toolkit called deactivating strategies.
Yes, the deactivating strategies.
These are specific actions or thought patterns used to deliberately, often subconsciously, squelch intimacy. What do these look like in practice?
They can range from very subtle to overtly destructive. A common one is focusing obsessively on minor physical or behavioral flaws of a partner.
Like what?
Well, an avoidant person might be falling in love, but suddenly they become fixated on the way their partner chews their food, or they decide their partner's laugh is annoying, and they use that trivial flaw to justify pulling away emotionally.
Oh, wow. It's also pulling away physically precisely at the moment. Things are going incredibly well. Like you have a deeply intimate weekend together, and on Monday, the avoidant partner completely ghosts you or starts an unnecessary fight.
It can also be checking out mentally when the partner is talking, keeping small secrets to maintain a barrier of privacy, or choosing to form relationships that have an impossible future.
Like dating someone who is married or someone who lives in another country.
Exactly. Because if the relationship has a built-in ceiling, there is a guaranteed limit on how close you can ever actually get. You never have to risk full integration.
It's a subconscious sabotage of their own relationships, driven by two overarching thought patterns. The first is mistaking self-reliance for true independence, which we've discussed. But the second is a fascinating psychological phenomenon researchers call empathic inaccuracy.
Yes, this was demonstrated brilliantly in a study by Jeffrey Simpson. His research showed that avoidant individuals are actually significantly less accurate at inferring their partner's thoughts and feelings than anxious or secure people.
So they literally don't understand what their partner is feeling.
It's more that they essentially train their brains not to read their partner's emotional cues, because reading them would require emotional engagement. When faced with a partner who is genuinely distressed, an avoidant person will often assume hostile intent. They will view the partner as needy, demanding, or trying to control them, rather than recognizing the simple truth that the partner is just seeking legitimate emotional reassurance.
And to maintain that emotional distance over the long term, avoidant people employ two massive psychological illusions. The first is longing for the Phantom X.
The Phantom X is a remarkably effective deactivating strategy. When an avoidant person is in a relationship that is getting a little too close for comfort, their brain will suddenly conjure up the memory of a past partner.
Just out of nowhere.
Just out of nowhere. They will become obsessed with this ex, remembering them as absolutely perfect, completely ignoring all the actual reasons they broke up. By pining for this flawless, unattainable ghost of the past, they create an impenetrable emotional barrier against their current, flawed, flesh and blood partner.
I can't fully commit to you because I'm still hung up on my ex. It's the perfect defense. And the second illusion is holding out for the flawless one.
Right. They convince themselves that their current relationship issues aren't because of their own avoidance or fear of intimacy, but simply because this specific person isn't their magical soulmate.
So they just keep looking.
They harbor this belief that somewhere out there, the one exists, and when they meet, intimacy will require zero compromise, no boundaries will be crossed, and everything will be effortless. It keeps them constantly looking toward the exit.
But the most revealing part of the science on avoidance is that their internal alarm isn't actually broken. It's just buried under heavy, heavy defenses. The book highlights a word recognition experiment that proves this beyond a shadow of a doubt.
This study is incredible. Researchers sat participants in front of a computer screen and flashed words very quickly. Avoidant people were remarkably slow to recognize words related to attachment anxiety.
Words like what?
Words like separation, loss, or death. It seemed as though their brains had suppressed those concepts entirely. They just didn't register the threat.
But then the researchers changed the experiment slightly.
Yes, they introduced a distracting cognitive task. They asked the participants to solve a puzzle or memorize a string of numbers while simultaneously watching the screen for the flashing words.
And what happened?
When the avoidant person's conscious mind was distracted by the cognitive load of the puzzle, their subconscious emotional defenses dropped. And suddenly, they recognized the words separation and loss just as fast as the anxious or secure people.
It proves that their attachment system, their deep biological fear of loss, is fully operational.
Fully operational.
They are just expending massive amounts of subconscious psychological energy every single second of the day to repress it. It's like a mental force field. The force field automatically powers up and pushes people away precisely at the moment they get too close. The avoidant person might not even realize they've turned it on. It's just an automatic proximity sensor.
And it leaves their partner bouncing off an invisible wall, completely bewildered and hurt.
But the science actually demands a lot of empathy from us. It's very easy to paint avoidant partners as the cold, heartless villains of the dating world who just love to break hearts. But based on that word recognition study, they aren't heartless at all. This distancing is a deeply ingrained subconscious defense mechanism.
Exactly. They are not villains. This is a survival strategy. It is almost always adopted very early in life to protect themselves from the intense pain of an unavailable, dismissive, or intrusive caregiver.
It's all they know.
If relying on someone hurts, your brain learns to never rely on anyone. The tragedy is that in adulthood, their defense mechanism, the force field, is so strong that it repels the very love and connection they biologically require, which often leads to lower relationship satisfaction and deep hidden feelings of isolation.
So we have the anxious person whose alarm is constantly blaring and the avoidant person who has buried their alarm under a concrete bunker. What happens when we look at the group whose alarm works perfectly? Let's examine the secure style, who the authors call the unsung heroes of relationships.
People with a secure attachment style are fundamentally comfortable with intimacy. They are warm, loving, and highly effective at communicating their needs.
Sounds nice.
It is. When their alarm goes off, they don't resort to the anxious protest behaviors, and they don't employ avoidant deactivating strategies. They simply expect their partners to be loving and responsive, and they extend that same responsiveness in return.
And the most amazing thing about secure people is a phenomenon researchers call the buffering effect. Patrick Keelan's research on this is incredibly hopeful for anyone who currently identifies as insecure.
Keelan's study looked at relationship satisfaction and conflict over time. Obviously, a couple where both partners are secure functions incredibly well. But the critical question was, what about a mixed couple? What happens when one secure partner dates an anxious person or an avoidant person?
The assumption would be that the insecure person drags the secure person down into the drama.
But the study showed the exact opposite. These mixed couples function almost as well and have just as little conflict as a couple where both partners are secure.
That is astounding. The secure partner literally elevates the insecure partner to their level of emotional stability. How do they do that?
The secure partner acts as a psychological buffer. Because they possess a deep internal belief that love is safe, they don't get easily triggered by their partner's dysfunction.
They stay calm.
Right. If the anxious partner starts acting out with protest behavior, the secure partner doesn't panic or take it personally. They just provide reassurance. If the avoidant partner pulls away slightly, the secure partner doesn't chase them frantically. They just give them space and wait for them to come back. By responding calmly and consistently, they eventually soothe the insecure partner's nervous system and actually train their brain to become more secure.
Secure people just have this incredible unconscious programming. Just like the avoidant people were tested with the flashing words, secure people were tested too. They naturally and unconsciously access themes of love and closeness incredibly quickly, and they naturally overlook and dismiss themes of danger, loss, and rejection. Their default baseline assumption about the world is that people are generally good and love is safe.
Which naturally leads to the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Where does the superpower come from?
Right. If you're listening to this and thinking, wow, my attachment system is a mess, how do I get that secure programming? Is it just luck of the draw? Did you just have to have perfect parents?
Surprisingly, no. John Bowlby originally hypothesized that it was purely based on maternal sensitivity in infancy. But long-term meta-analyses of attachment research show that the correlation between sensitive parenting in infancy and secure attachment in adulthood is actually quite weak.
Really? So it's not all your mother's fault?
Exactly. It's a complex mosaic of factors. Genetics certainly play a role. Studies show identical twins are more likely to share an attachment style than fraternal twins. But crucially, Romantic experiences in adulthood play a massive transformative role.
This is hands down the best news in the entire book. Attachment styles are not permanent diagnoses. They are stable, but plastic.
Yes, neuroplasticity applies to attachment. The research shows that about 25 to 30% of people actually change their attachment style over a 4-year period.
That is a lot of people.
It is. This means that if you are deeply insecure, whether anxious or avoidant, you can actively learn to become secure. You can do this by intentionally observing and mimicking the behaviors of secure role models, or by dating a secure person and allowing their buffering effect to heal your nervous system over time.
And the book lays out exactly how a secure person operates. If you want to provide a secure base for a partner, it boils down to 3 foundational behaviors. Number 1, be available. Answer the phone, respond to the text, be physically and emotionally present when they need you. Number 2, don't interfere. Let your partner do their own thing, support their autonomy without micromanaging them. And number 3, act encouragingly. Be their biggest cheerleader and validate their dreams.
If you can consistently provide those 3 things, you become the tether that allows your partner to boldly explore space.
It makes me think of a car. A secure partner is like the shock absorbers on a vehicle. Every relationship drives over sudden bumps and potholes. Financial stress, family issues, miscommunications. The anxious person hits a bump and jerks the steering wheel, spinning the car out of control. The avoidant person hits a bump, assumes the car is broken, and ejects from the vehicle entirely.
Oh, that's good.
But the secure person, the shock absorbers, absorbs the violent impact of the conflict, diffuses the kinetic tension, and ensures the ride inside the cabin stays smooth and comfortable.
That is a perfect visualization of the buffering effect in action.
But wait, if a secure person acts as a shock absorber, can they ever wear out? If a secure person dates an extreme avoidant or a highly volatile anxious person for years, can they be dragged down? Can a secure person lose their security and become insecure themselves?
Absolutely. While secure people are incredibly resilient, they are not invincible. If a secure person finds themselves in a prolonged toxic relationship, say with an extreme avoidant who constantly devalues them, gaslights them, and refuses intimacy over a period of years, the secure person's core belief that love is safe and reliable will eventually be shattered.
They get broken down.
They can be dragged into a highly anxious state, constantly seeking validation from a partner who withholds it. This is why it is vital, even for secure people, to recognize the smoking guns of extreme insecurity and protect their own emotional health.
Which perfectly sets the stage for what happens when a secure person isn't there to act as the buffer. What happens when an anxious person collides head-on with an avoidant person? The authors call this the anxious avoidant trap, and it is often a disaster.
It is statistically the most common of the insecure pairings, and without a doubt the most volatile. The anxious avoidant trap occurs when 2 diametrically opposed intimacy needs are locked in a room together. We touched on the vicious cycle earlier, but it is critical to understand the mechanics.
The death spiral.
Exactly. The anxious partner perceives a slight distance and gets triggered. Their alarm goes off, and they use protest behavior to try and force closeness.
Which makes the avoidant partner run.
The avoidant partner perceives this aggressive pursuit as a direct threat to their independence. Their force field powers up, and they use deactivating strategies to pull away. This sudden withdrawal triggers even more severe panic and pursuit from the anxious partner, which causes the avoidant to build an even thicker, higher wall. Around and around they go.
And the book outlines the telltale signs that you are caught in this trap. We mentioned the roller coaster effect of extreme highs and lows, but there is also a deeply toxic dynamic called emotional counterbalancing.
Emotional counterbalancing is a subconscious trade-off. The avoidant person derives their sense of strength, independence, and superiority specifically from the fact that the anxious person acts weak, needy, and dependent.
That's messed up.
It is. The avoidant partner feels emotionally self-sufficient only in contrast to their partner's panic. They basically offshore all the vulnerability onto the anxious partner, leaving them holding all the emotional baggage of the relationship.
And the result of this trap is a state they call stable instability. The relationship might actually last for years or even decades, but it is chronically, deeply unsatisfying for both people. It's a perpetual stalemate. The authors use a brilliant, mundane, real-world example of a couple named Janet and Mark to illustrate this. They were fighting viciously over buying a washing machine.
Right. Mark, who is the anxious partner, desperately wants to buy a washing machine for their shared apartment. Janet, who is avoidant, vehemently refuses, claiming it's a waste of money.
But it's not about the money.
But when you look at the attachment subtext, it has absolutely nothing to do with appliances or finances. It is entirely a covert war over intimacy.
Because Janet currently takes her laundry to her sister's house every single weekend and spends the entire Sunday there, away from Mark. It's a built-in deactivating strategy to guarantee herself space every week. Mark wants the washing machine specifically so Janet will stay home and spend the weekend with him. They are fighting bitterly about spin cycles, but they are actually fighting for their biological attachment needs.
And it can get much darker than laundry disputes. The authors tell the story of Marcia and Craig, which illustrates the extreme end of the trap. They dated for a while and it was okay, but the moment they got married, Craig began treating Marcia awfully.
This illustrates a heartbreaking concept for avoidant partners, which is how life in the inner circle turns you into the enemy. When Marcia was just a girlfriend, there was still a psychological barrier, so Craig could tolerate the intimacy. But once they signed the marriage license, she crossed the final threshold into his inner circle. To his deeply avoidant attachment system, she became an ultimate, inescapable threat to his independence. The closer she tried to get as his wife, the more he degraded and distanced her.
And this is where the book discusses how extreme avoidance can use physical intimacy itself as a weapon of distance. Craig initiated strict physical rules in the bedroom. No kissing, no cuddling, no looking in each other's eyes. It was just a physical act, or he wouldn't have sex at all.
He stripped all the emotion out of it.
It's a defense mechanism. It's a way of being physically present to satisfy a biological urge, but remaining emotionally entirely absent, maintaining the ultimate boundary against his wife.
Reading stories like Marcia's, the logical response is just to scream, "Leave him, just walk away." But the reality of breaking up is insanely, painfully hard, especially for the anxious partner. And the book explains exactly why. The pain of a breakup isn't just a metaphor, it is literal biological agony.
Brain imaging confirms this. The emotional pain of a breakup is processed in the exact same brain regions as physical trauma. If you break your leg at a car crash or if you get dumped by a partner you're attached to, your brain's pain centers light up in nearly identical patterns.
To really understand why it's so physically agonizing to separate, the authors point to Myron Hoffer's famous rat pup study.
Hoffer's research is foundational. He separated rat pups from their mothers and observed what happened to the infants. It wasn't just behavioral distress, it was a total physiological collapse.
Wow.
The pups' heart rates plummeted, their body temperature dropped significantly, and their growth hormone levels crashed. Their entire biological system went into shock.
But the genius of the study was how he tried to fix it. He tried to artificially replace the mother one variable at a time.
Exactly. He thought, maybe they just need the physical warmth. So he provided artificial warmth to the pups. Their body temperature went back up to normal, but their heart rates stayed dangerously low.
So it wasn't just the warmth.
So then he thought, maybe it's the nutrition. He provided artificial milk. Their heart rates went up, but they still didn't produce growth hormone. He eventually discovered that every single physiological system in the infant was regulated by a different, highly specific interaction with the mother. Her warmth regulated one thing, her milk regulated another. The specific tactile touch of her grooming regulated another.
And this maps directly to human adults. When we attach to a partner, they become our co-regulator. When we break up, we lose that physiological regulator entirely. All our biological systems go into sudden withdrawal. This is why when you get dumped, your sleep cycle is ruined, your appetite vanishes, your chest physically aches, and your heart rate goes haywire. Your biological co-regulator is missing.
It is literal withdrawal, akin to coming off a potent drug. And this agonizing biological withdrawal leads directly to what we call the rebound effect.
No, this is the worst.
The anxious person is in so much physical and emotional pain from the separation that their attachment system completely overrides their logic. They run right back to the toxic avoidant partner, begging for another chance, solely because that partner is the only entity on Earth who can instantly relieve the biological withdrawal symptoms. They mistake the relief of the physical pain for true love.
It's like an addict going back to the drug just to stop the withdrawals, even though they know the drug is killing them. So if someone is listening to this and realizes they are caught in the anxious avoidant trap, how do they escape, especially if they decide they want to stay and try to make the relationship work?
The book suggests a very clinical, conscious approach. You have to start by creating a relationship inventory.
Okay, writing things down.
Yes. This means sitting down with a pen and paper and mapping out your exact activating and deactivating triggers. You have to intellectually chart the vicious cycle. When he does X, I feel Y, and I react by doing Z. You have to see the code of the matrix happening in real time so you can interrupt it. And crucially, you have to consciously adopt that integrated, secure role model we talked about earlier.
I found this part of the book deeply moving. The authors say that if you grew up with terrible examples of relationships and you have no secure human role models in your life to mimic, you can astonishingly model your secure base on the pure, secure love you experience with a pet.
It sounds a little absurd at first, but biologically it is entirely sound.
Think about a dog. A golden retriever gives you unconditional love, is always thrilled to see you, doesn't play mind games, and provides a perfectly safe emotional haven. The authors argue that you can literally take the security you feel with that animal, analyze how it makes your nervous system feel calm, and consciously channel that expectation into your human romantic relationships. You train your brain to seek the human equivalent of a golden retriever.
Because it accesses the exact same neural pathways of secure attachment. You are teaching your brain what safety feels like.
Wait, if these two people have completely opposite biological temperature settings, like a thermostat war where one person is shivering and cranking the heat and the other is sweating and opening all the windows, are they just doomed? Can they actually fix the trap, or should they just accept their biology and walk away?
It is arguably the most difficult question in the book. The hard truth is, if neither partner has the self-awareness to recognize their attachment style and how they trigger each other, yes, they are highly likely doomed to a life of miserable, stable instability.
That's grim.
However, if both partners read the science, understand their respective triggers, and fully commit to the exhausting work of overriding their biological knee-jerk reactions, they can move toward the middle.
It's possible.
It is. The anxious person can learn self-soothing techniques to quiet their alarm, and the avoidant person can learn to tolerate greater degrees of closeness without activating their force field. But it requires immense conscious effort, and it is achieved primarily through learning a highly specific way of talking to each other.
Understanding the trap is step one. But disarming the trap in real time requires learning to speak a completely different, secure language. Let's explore how we actually do this through communication and conflict resolution.
It all hinges on what the authors call effective communication. This doesn't just mean talking more. It means expressing your emotional needs directly, clearly, without blame, without anxious protest behaviors, and without avoidant deactivating strategies. But the critical nuance here is that the timing of this communication must be vastly different depending on your biological style.
Right. If you are anxious, the absolute golden rule is that you must use effective communication before you resort to protest behavior. When you feel that panic rising in your chest, before you send the 14th text message, before you pick a fight about the dishes to get their attention, you have to stop, take a breath, and say directly, "I'm feeling really insecure right now because we haven't connected today, and I just need some quick reassurance that we are good."
And if you are avoidant, the rule is the inverse. You must use effective communication the precise moment you feel the overwhelming urge to bolt.
Before you ghost them.
Exactly. Instead of just ghosting, checking out mentally, or picking apart your partner's flaws, you must verbalize the biological truth. You say, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, and I need some space to myself for a few hours. This is about my own biological wiring and my need to decompress. It is not a flaw in you, and I promise I will come back and connect with you tonight."
Just saying those words out loud, "I promise I will come back," prevents the anxious partner's alarm from blaring. It's like giving your partner the user manual to your brain. So many of us expect our partners to just magically guess which emotional buttons to push and which wires to avoid. Effective communication is literally handing them the manual and saying, "Here is exactly how my attachment system works. Here's what triggers me, and here is exactly how to soothe me."
It completely removes the guesswork, and, more importantly, it removes the resentment from the partnership. And the authors suggest you shouldn't wait until you're deep in a relationship to use this. They introduce a concept called Miranda's Law of Dating.
Just like reading a suspect their Miranda rights when they get arrested.
Exactly. It means outlining your relationship expectations clearly and securely from the very first few dates. You don't have to be heavy-handed, but you set the boundary early that you expect mutual care, regular communication, responsiveness, and emotional intimacy. If the person you are dating balks at that, calls you intense, or pulls away, they have clearly revealed their avoidant style. And armed with that knowledge, you walk away before your attachment system gets hooked.
But even with a secure partner, conflict inevitably arises, and when it does, secure people naturally utilize 5 secure principles for conflict. Let's break these down because they are incredibly powerful when used correctly. Number 1, Show basic concern for the other's well-being, even when you are furious at them.
This is critical. You can be angry about a behavior without attacking the person's character. You maintain a baseline of respect.
Number 2, maintain focus on the exact problem at hand.
Which means, if you are arguing about who forgot to pay the electric bill, you do not bring up a mistake your partner made 3 years ago on a vacation. You keep the conflict incredibly narrow, which prevents the amygdala from getting overwhelmed by multiple threats.
Number 3, refrain from generalizing the conflict.
This means eliminating the words always and never from your vocabulary. No, you always ignore me, or you never help around the house. Generalizations put the partner instantly on the defensive.
Number 4, be willing to engage.
You cannot stonewall. You cannot simply walk out of the room and refuse to speak, which is a classic avoidant tactic that sends an anxious partner into a spiral. You must stay in the arena.
And number 5, effectively communicate feelings, not accusations. Use I feel statements rather than you did this statements. Now, I have to challenge this framework. These 5 principles, staying focused, showing concern, avoiding generalizations, sound absolutely flawless on paper in a calm laboratory setting. But when you are in the heat of a massive argument, your amygdala is hijacked, your heart rate is 120 beats per minute, and you are furious, isn't it almost biologically impossible to remember and execute a logical 5-step list?
You are entirely correct. It is incredibly difficult in the heat of the moment. The amygdala hijack is a real, overwhelming biological event. When you are flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, the logical prefrontal cortex goes offline. That is exactly why the authors emphasize practicing these skills during low-stakes minor disagreements.
So you have to train yourself.
You have to build the neurological muscle memory of secure communication when you are relatively calm, so that it becomes your default biological reaction when you are severely triggered.
You practice in peacetime so you are ready for war.
Precisely. And if you are simply too flooded to execute the principles, the most secure move you can make is to call a timeout. You say, my nervous system is too activated to use my words productively right now. Let's take a 20-minute break so my heart rate can calm down, and then we will resume. That in itself is executing principle number 4, willingness to engage just on a biologically delayed timeline.
You have to manage the biology before you can manage the psychology. And underlying all of this conflict resolution is attachment biology 101. It's not just about the stress hormones, it's about the bonding hormones, specifically oxytocin.
Oxytocin is the biological glue of attachment. When you engage in simple acts of physical touch, holding hands, a long hug, cuddling on the couch, your brain releases a flood of oxytocin. This hormone literally and biochemically immunizes a relationship against conflict for days afterward. It creates a baseline physiological state of trust and safety that allows those 5 secure principles to actually work when a fight does break out.
So if we look at the big picture here, what the science is really telling us is that conflict is not inherently a sign of a failing relationship.
Not at all. From an evolutionary perspective, conflict is actually a biological necessity. It is the mechanism by which 2 separate individuals recalibrate their boundaries, negotiate their shared resources, and understand each other's evolving needs over a lifespan.
That's a reframe.
The core difference is perception. Insecure people view conflict as a zero-sum game, a literal threat to their relational survival. Secure people view conflict as a messy, uncomfortable, but entirely necessary opportunity to deepen the bond and understand the inner workings of their partner's mind.
So we've journeyed all the way from the prehistoric savannah to the modern dating app. Let's bring this all together. This book fundamentally matters because we are all raised on a diet of fairy tales, romantic comedies, and pop songs that teach us that love conquers all. If the love is real, the narrative goes, everything else will magically fall into place.
But the hard, empirical biological science proves that love is absolutely not enough. 2 people can deeply, genuinely love each other, but if they possess radically mismatched attachment capacities, if an extreme anxious is paired with an extreme avoidant, that love will be expressed as toxic trauma. Attachment styles are real, biological phenomena that require conscious, educated navigation.
Anyone looking to understand the baffling history of their past relationships, anyone trying to navigate the modern dating world without losing their mind or settling for crumbs, or anyone desperate to heal a current partnership that feels stuck in a trap will benefit immensely from understanding this source material. It gives you that X-ray vision we talked about at the very beginning of the show. It lets you see the bone.
And perhaps most importantly, it removes the heavy burden of shame. If you take one thing away from this science, let it be this. You are not needy. You are not broken. You are a perfectly functioning biological organism seeking a secure base, exactly as evolution designed you to do.
Before we wrap up, what is the final provocative thought you want to leave our listeners with today? Something for them to mull over that builds on everything we've discussed.
If we fully accept the premise of this research, that human brains are biologically hardwired to require a secure base in order to confidently explore the world, what happens when we apply this attachment lens to our broader culture?
Oh, that's interesting.
Does our modern societal obsession with avoidant independence, the relentless messaging telling us to never need anyone, to hustle entirely alone, to be perfectly self-sufficient at all times, does that cultural avoidance ultimately isolate us? Does it increase our collective anxiety and stunt our growth as a society? If we are biologically built for dependency, is our cultural cult of independence actually making us physically and psychologically sick?
Wow. That is a massive paradigm-shifting question to ponder. If we are fighting our own biology on a cultural level every single day, it's no wonder everyone is so chronically stressed out. What an incredible deep dive this has been. Thank you all for joining us on this journey through the science of love and attachment. We warmly invite you to subscribe to the Book Nook so you never miss an exploration like this one. We are building an incredible community here, and we want you to be a part of it.
It's been an absolute pleasure unpacking this with you all.
And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which book you'd like us to explore next. We read every single one.